All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the Users, Permissions, and Roles Skills Kickstart. We're going to talk about all things users, permissions, and roles, how to set them up, and how to manage them. My name is Jocelyn Ironcloud. I am a customer enablement specialist here at Encompass. Been here just over 3 years, and I started my time here on our CRM support team. So spent a lot of time working with user records and permissions, and then also setting up some automations using our app library, which we're going to talk about today too. So let's go over the things we're going to cover. We're going to start with talking about the structure of users, roles, and permissions and how they relate to each other in Encompass. How to manage and inactivate your users. We'll talk about authentications, and then we'll close out talking about single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and then with those applications and app library that you can use to manage your users and roles. So jumping right in, we'll start with our roles and permissions, and we're going to start looking at that overall structure. So at the very top of the user hierarchy is user types. User types roll down into roles, and then under roles is users. Within our users and our entire hierarchy here, we also have permissions, and we have two types of permissions, one that rolls up to roles and one that rolls up to users. We're going to take a look at each one of these elements here a little bit more closely as we go through the whole presentation. Starting out with user types, that hierarchy, that highest part of the hierarchy. So user types in Encompass control the type of data that a user can see. So we know that it's not just our employees logging into our Encompass sites. We have lots of different people who might be logging in, say a vendor, a supplier, a customer, an AR account user, someone from a chain, all different types of users that could be logging in. We don't want everyone to see the same things, whether you're one of those types of users or an employee, right? So we differentiate those users at this highest level, the user type. Roles are linked to our user types. So if we look back at our hierarchy here, we know that user types and roles are directly connected. We don't set a user type on a specific user. It's assigned to their role, and whatever role you have, you inherit that user type. We have two user types for employees. We have employee restricted and employee not restricted. Employee restricted is going to be for your employees that are maybe lower in the company, say like somebody in the warehouse or a sales rep, a delivery rep, someone who doesn't need to see anything and everything in Encompass all the time. Employee restricted is going to limit what they see to their own user data. So when they go to the users table, they'll only see themselves. And when they're looking at other information such as customers or reports, they're only going to see things about the customers that are assigned to them. So they're not going to see their coworkers' customers or somebody's customers from another location. They're only going to see who's assigned to them. Employee not restricted is the complete opposite. So they're going to see anything and everything all the time. We have some limitations that we can put on that, which we'll talk about here in a little bit with permissions and locations, but without any other restrictions on top of it, the employee not restricted user type is kind of a free-for-all. And then we have our partner user types. Our partner user types are for those other types of people that are logging into our site. So those chain users, the customer users, suppliers users, anyone who's not an employee at your company is going to have a partner user type. We define these different user types on our user home dashboard. I'm just going to pop it open here so you can see it. This is the user home dashboard. You can get to it just typing in that universal search bar user home. And in this left-hand corner here, we have definitions for each of those user types. So you can kind of understand what they're going to see when they log in. So for example, we have our customer users here. We see that they can view the invoices, reports, and other data for a single account. What that means is we link the customer that they're working for or the company that they work for to their user record, which we'll talk about later on how we do that. But they're only seeing data for the company that they work for. There's some other helpful information on here too about permissions, some best practices, kind of how our time clock activities work, and some other helpful links to get to other things in Encompass. I'm not going to go through all of them, but go ahead and check out this dashboard. It's got some great stuff on here. All right, so next in our hierarchy under user types is roles. Roles are who you are in Encompass. A role is typically going to match what your job title is. So if you're an accountant, you have an accountant role. If you are a deliveryman, you have a deliveryman role. If you're a cashier, you have a cashier role, and so on. Of course, there's some wiggle room with that, but typically it's going to match what you do. A role is a grouping of permissions that everybody in that role has access to. So we essentially take a handful of permissions, everything you need to be able to do your job, bundle them all up into a role, and everybody who is assigned that role gets the same permission. You can only be assigned one role. So imagine we have, say, a sales rep who on Fridays comes into the office and helps us balance load sheets. Those are not going to be permissions that a typical sales rep has, right? That is probably something either a cashier or an accountant has those permissions to be able to do that balancing. So that sales rep would need extra permissions. What I can't do is assign a sales rep role and a cashier role to the same person. You can only have one. We have other ways to get around that so that they can still do those different processes that's not in their normal role, which we'll talk about here in a bit when we get over to permissions. Roles also control some other things other than, what you can just click, right? Things that you can see, the permissions that you get. It also controls the dashboards that you can see. There's a table called dashboard roles, and it is specific to a role who can view that dashboard. It can also control the reports that you can see, what alerts you get, the knowledge documents that you can see, and then even the mobile application or the layout of Encompass Mobile when they log in. We do have a bunch of built-in default roles ready and available for you the first time you ever log into Encompass. These are roles that we've determined are some of the most common roles that we see at companies and the permissions that you need to do the most typical processes in that role. Of course, everybody's going to have some unique role at their company where maybe they're doing 2 or 3 jobs combined. We have the ability to do custom roles in that instance. So on the roles table here, you'll have that add roles button where you can name it their specific job title or whatever you want it to say, and then assign permissions to them for whatever they'll need. Speaking of permissions are going to be what a user can do, what they can see, and what they can edit or change in Encompass. So it controls quite a bit. There's 2 types of permissions. Roles permissions, which we've already talked about, which is that bundling of permissions that you can assign based on a role. But we also have users permissions. So thinking back to our sales rep who comes in on Fridays to help us balance load sheets. What I wouldn't want to do is assign additional permissions to their role. That would mean every single sales rep who has the sales rep role would be able to do those cashier duties, and I don't want that. I just want that one user to be able to do it. Users permissions gives me the ability to assign kind of onesie-twosie different permissions to an individual person instead of their overall role. We have this roles and permissions dashboard, another little helpful one here. We'll open this up so we can take a look. Essentially what this does is it kind of defines our different permissions and then the recommended roles who should have those permissions. They're separated out by user type, so we can see these are our employee user types here. We get a list of permissions, the description of that permission, and then who we recommend has those permissions. These are mostly going to be built into those default roles that we have, but if you build something new, this is a good place to come check which permissions they may need for their role. And then as we scroll down, we get those other user types too. So we have financials role, which is for anybody who uses Encompass Financials. And then we have our partner user types at the bottom. So the permissions that they get, descriptions of those permissions, and then who and what they can do. So helpful dashboard, especially if you are creating your own custom role. The other place that you can kind of check how permissions are working, say you want to double check a process that somebody is going to be doing and make sure they have the permission to edit a table or whatever it may be. We have a table definition table that you can check what permissions are needed to do certain things. The way you get to it is by going to the table that they're going to be doing that process on. So we'll use the products table, for example. I'm going to click that subtables button. And at the bottom of my list, I'm going to have a table definition button. All right, so a few things I can see here. At the very top, this is going to be for the overall products table. So I have a view permission, an add permission, meaning adding records, and a delete permission, deleting records. There's 3 different permissions here that I need to do those 3 separate things. I also have field permissions. So if I click into this table fields table here, I'm going to see each field that is on the products table and the permission I need to view that field and edit that field. Anything in these table fields, view and edit permissions are going to override that the overall table. So if they're different, you may want to look in here as well. All right. So I alluded earlier to having some additional limitations that you can put on users, especially if they have that employee not restricted user type, but really for everybody. Location permissions is one of those ways we can do that. Your location permission is where you are in Encompass. So this is going to be the location that you physically work out of or your primary location that you work out of. Every single user record is going to have a location. So here's our location field here. It's a required field, so everybody has one. This is going to be the location, that you're going into the warehouse or going into the office where you primarily work out of. We also have an all locations permission. This is exactly what you probably think it is, meaning that you're giving access to all of your different warehouse locations if you have multiple of them. There's some caveats with this all locations permission though, that gives some extra access outside of, just being able to see a location. When this all locations permission is set to true, you will be able to see discontinued products. So if you have somebody in the warehouse who is managing inventory or somebody who does your forecasting and they need to be able to see a list of those discontinued products, even if they're not working out of those other locations, they need this all locations permission set to true to be able to see those discontinued products. This is also true for our production customers. So if you're needing to see recipes that are in other locations, you will also need this all locations permission field set to true on your user record. All right. The third way we can apply location permissions is our users location subtable. Users locations are similar to like users permissions where they're kind of onesie twosie assigning. Instead of just having one or all, you can have somewhere in between. So if I have 4 warehouse locations and Nick here only needs to access 2 of them, I can assign them their primary location and then any additional locations like this Dodge City location using users locations. So they don't get the all locations permission, but they can still see the 2 that they need to access. All right, let's talk about a few best practices here. Starting off, we want to minimize user permissions. So just because you can assign them doesn't mean that you should. We don't necessarily want to just assign everybody permissions that they might need someday. You want to make sure you're only assigning the permissions that they absolutely need. That way, we're minimizing risks of them adding, updating, deleting things that they probably shouldn't be, and only getting the permissions they need to do their job. Something to note about the user's permissions, like with our sales rep who comes in once a week to do those balancing of load sheets, Those users' permissions can start to get difficult to manage, especially if there's many of them assigned to one person or multiple people. If you're getting to the point where you're adding multiple users' permissions over and over again, at that point, it may make more sense to just create a new role and have all of those permissions rolled up into that one bundle. All right, so we already talked about making sure that they have only the permissions that they need. And then, of course, this last one here, we're going to talk about a little bit later, but this is just to remind people that we don't want you logging in using somebody else's credentials. This has come up a lot with, some managers that maybe get a call from one of their sales reps and say, hey, I'm trying to access this report or whatever it may be, and it's not showing up for me. And then they'll give them their username and password to log in to see what they're seeing. This is not what we want you to do. That is a security risk, right? We don't want people logging in as somebody else. So we have a feature that lets you clone their permissions and see Encompass just like they would see it, which we'll talk about here just a little bit later. All right, so now we're going to get into talking about user setup and inactivation. The easiest way to invite a new user to Encompass, no matter who they are, is from the Invite New Users dashboard. This dashboard lets you quickly put in a few different pieces of required information and send them an invite and create a user record at the same time. So it kind of does all in one everything. You'll just get to this dashboard from the search bar going to the Invite New Users dashboard. You'll fill in their full name. You can add a username if you want, if you have a specific way that you do your usernames at your company, like first initial, last name. Or you can leave it blank and the system will create one for you. You'll enter their email, the location, their primary location, and then their role. Again, that role is going to determine their user type. So if this is a customer that you're inviting, you're going to want to choose one of those customer roles that has that customer user type. If it's an employee, you're obviously going to choose their employee role. Then you'll just hit that send invite. You get a list at the bottom here of anything that's pending. So you can kind of see who's out there who hasn't actually signed in yet. The other way that you can add a user is manually on our users table. So there's a couple reasons you might want to do this. If you are adding somebody just for contact information, instead of having them log into the site, you can put in their contact information here as adding them as a user, and it gives you the ability to skip their email. So unlike the last dashboard where the email field is required, it is not required here. Now, if this person is going to be logging in and actually getting into the Encompass site, it is highly recommended that they have an email or a phone number, one of the two. The reason is for being able to reset their own password, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So while you have the ability to skip this, it's not recommended unless this person's never going to log in. The other nice thing you can do here is you can copy existing users. So say you had a cashier that left the company and you rehired to fill that role. You can take their existing user record and copy all of their information, change out their name, their contact information, the things that need to change, and copy everything that was already existing. So their role, their user permissions, locations permissions, everything that that past person had, so that there's no discrepancy between the two people and they all get the same access. All right, so let's talk about those partner users a little bit more here for a second. I mentioned that they're only going to be able to see information for the company that they work for, right? These external users or partner users need to be linked to their company in order to view their company's information. The way that we do this in Encompass is by adding an additional table record to create that link between their user and their company. So a couple things need to be created first. Their user record needs to be created first. So what we were just doing. And The company that they work for also needs to exist. So their customer record, the supplier, the vendor, whatever it may be. So once both of those things exist, then we can link them together. If it is a customer user, a chain user, or an AR account user, all three of these can be created right from the customer's dashboard. So this should be a pretty familiar dashboard. We'll just open one up here. This is the customer's dashboard. And if I scroll down, I've got this users section here. This is going to show me who is already linked to this customer. So I've got two of them here. And then at the bottom, I have these three buttons: customers, users, chain users, and AR account users. When I click on these, it's going to take me over to the table to link our users. So here's my two that are already linked. To add a new one, I'm just going to click that add button at the top. It already fills in the customer for me, and then I just need to find a user. So I'm going to find somebody random here. And then all I need to do is click add record. That creates that link between the customer and the user record. So when I come back to my list here, I now have my three customers users. So when Greta, Diego, or Debbie log in, they're going to only see information about this customer that they're linked to. Customer users and really any of our partner types can be linked to more than one, but only within the same type. So Greta can be linked to multiple different customers, but she can't be linked to a customer and a vendor, right? That customer, the user type kind of dictates what they can see. So they need to be able to be in the same realm as their user type. So if they are a customer user type, they are linked to customers. If they're a vendor user type, they're linked to vendors. Same process for adding chain users and AR account users. It's going to take you to a similar table where you just hit add and pick the user. Now for our other partner users, our suppliers users and vendors users, the process is a little bit different. So instead of having that handy button on the customer's dashboard, because suppliers and vendors aren't linked to a customer, they're linked to a supplier or a vendor. We do that a little bit differently. So open up our site here again. And the way that we would do that is go to either the suppliers or the vendors table, whichever one you're trying to link. So I'll choose suppliers, search for the supplier that you want to link. Okay, here's my supplier. And then I'm going to go to subtables and suppliers users or vendors users if you're linking a vendor. Okay, I get this subtable here. Then I'm just going to click add suppliers users or vendors users. And same process here. You're just going to pick whoever the user is that you need to link and click add record. It's going to create that link for them. So whenever Tim or Al log in, they're only going to see information about their supplier, Wind and Clouds Brewing. All right. Now moving on to inactivating users. So when somebody leaves the company, we need to inactivate their access so that they're no longer able to log into Encompass and make any changes or view any information. The quickest way to do this is just from the users table. So going to their user record, finding the user that you need to inactivate, and we're looking for this active field here. When you hover over this field, you'll get an edit pencil. And we want to toggle this active field off. So this green means that it's on, it's active. When you click on it, it's going to turn gray, meaning that it's off. And then you'll click Save Changes. That's going to take away their ability to log in and see anything in Encompass. Okay. The one thing that it doesn't do when you inactivate someone, it won't update the ownership on dashboards or saved reports. So this is like a sales manager, and they have some important dashboards or reports maybe that are scheduled to send out to people once a week. You'll want to reassign those to somebody who's going to be managing them for the person that left so that those don't fall through the cracks. All right, talk some best practices. So when you're creating new users, especially if it's somebody who is replacing somebody else, the easiest way to do that is to copy a similar user. So somebody in the same role and location who's going to be doing the exact same thing. When possible, copy that user record. It limits the discrepancies and you don't have any permissions fall through the cracks where you're going to get a call in a week that they can't do something that they're supposed to be able to do. Inactivate your users as soon as possible. So if somebody's leaving the company, make sure that you're inactivating them as soon as they're gone so that they can't log in and do things that they might not be, that they shouldn't be doing, to limit your security risk. We have an automated feature that can do this for you in the app library that we will talk about towards the end, but we always want to make sure that they are inactivated. The last thing, again, we want to make sure that whenever possible, we add an email to a user record. This allows them to reset their own password, which we'll talk about more here in just a bit, and gives them global authentication, which again, we'll cover here in a second. But when you're creating those users, it's really important that whenever possible, you have an email attached to their user record. All right, let's get into passwords and authentications. Authentications are a way to create essentially like a global user record for any Encompass site that you access. So if you have your own Encompass site, maybe you have DSD Link and you log into our support site to request services. Maybe you have another company that you work for that also has an Encompass site. You can have one login across all of those different Encompass sites. The way that we do that is through your email. So this is another reason that email on your user record is really important. That email creates that link between all of your sites. So when a user record is created with your email on another site, Encompass will automatically link those through your authentication. The nice thing is that gives you one email and password login for every single site. Your username might be a little different depending on the site, but if you log in with your email and your password, no matter which one it is, as long as you have access, you can log in with that email and password. The other thing it gives you the ability to do is use our switch site function. So that's what we see over here on the right. In the bottom left corner, if you click on your name, you'll have this switch site button. And any sites that you have access to or have authentication in will be listed in the pop-up that pops up here. So I can see I also have access to DSD Link, and I get this switch button. When I click on the switch button, it's going to automatically take me to that site and log me in. So I don't have to type in dsdlink.com, put in my email and password, log in, do my multi-factor authentication. I'm already authenticated from the site that I'm already logged into, so I can just switch over to the other one. It makes it really quick and easy. Now, when we're talking about putting emails on people's user records, something really important to keep in mind is that every single user should have a unique email on their user record. What we don't want is for, say, your two accountants who have a general accounting email that you use to have that general accounting email on both of their user records. That's going to create problems with your authentications. It can cause some unexpected behavior. Your reporting can look a bit wonky. Your saved reports get kind of wonky too, and your dashboards. So it's super important that you don't repeat emails on your users. If it happens, and it does, there's a quick way to double check that. So the person who is having authentication issues can go to their profile. In that bottom left corner, you click on your name, click on profile, and on the left-hand side under your name, there will be a little warning here that says you have other users linked to your authentication, meaning that your email is repeated on some other user record. There's a hyperlink here that you can click on to manage that. So when you click on that, you'll get this pop-up over here on the right, and it's going to list the users that have the same email. So I can see the two users here that have the same email address, Andy@encompass8.com, Andy@encompass8.com, and I can unlink them. So using the checkboxes, I can check which one is correct, or which ones I need to unlink, and click that unlink button. All right. Let's talk passwords. These are some of the basics about your passwords in Encompass and kind of the things that you're going to see while you're resetting or creating new passwords. So first things first, passwords in Encompass expire after 1 year. So no matter what, we're going to have you create a new password after 1 year. You'll get a pop-up that says you need to enter a new password the next time that you log in once you've passed that 1 year time frame. We allow 10 failed login attempts before you're required to reset your password. So if you forgot your password, you can try up to 10 times. If you exceed that 10 times, you'll be required to use that forgot password or call into the office and have somebody reset your password. This is going to take us back a little bit to that email or mobile number on somebody's user record. If somebody surpasses this 10 failed login attempts, or they just forgot their password, if they have an email or mobile number on their user record, they can reset it themselves. So just like any other website, they can click that forgot password, it'll send them an email or text message, and they can reset their own password. If they don't have an email or mobile number, they will have to call into the office, find somebody at the office who has the password reset permission, and have them create a temporary password for them. You can see where this is probably not the recommended way. This is a lot of work for the person to do and to try to find somebody at the office who has this permission and find the time to reset their password for them. Once they reset their password and give them that temporary password, the person will log in with that temporary password, and then they still have to create one on their own. So it's not like the person in the office is going to know their password forever, but it's more work for them to have to call in and get somebody to reset it for them. That's why we recommend having the email or phone number on their user record. And then here's some of our password requirements here. We want to make sure that your password doesn't match your username. It doesn't have 3 consecutive letters, so like LLL, 222, whatever it may be. The password can't have been recently used, so we define that as your 4 most recent passwords. It has to be between 8 and 64 characters and include both alpha and numeric characters in the password. So these are the requirements. If you're creating your password and it doesn't have one of these things, you'll get a little pop-up or a warning that tells you you need to include that in your password. So some best practices for passwords and your authentications. Again, we strongly recommend you have either an email or a phone number listed on a user record to reset their own password. Again, do not use the same email for more than one user. That causes problems with authentication. So don't use that general accounting email on both of your accounting people. They need their own unique email on their user record. Every user needs their own username and password. This is pretty straightforward. We don't want people reusing the same username and password. So we don't want the 4 merchandisers to be using the same merchandiser login. They need all of their own logins. This minimizes security risks and it can create inaccurate reporting. So imagine your 4 merchandisers all logging in using the same username and password. You're not going to be able to tell who is doing what in any of your reports. So everyone gets their own. And then, of course, like any other website or any other account that you create, use a strong password, that combination of letters and characters, numbers and uppercase and lowercase, and make it a password that you're going to remember. So while it needs to be strong, make it something you'll remember so that you don't have to keep resetting it all the time. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about MFA or multi-factor authentication. A while back, Encompass implemented our own MFA. So you don't have to use a third party if you don't want to, which is super nice. What happens when you log into Encompass is you'll get this pop-up here that says a login request has been pushed to your primary device. If you use Encompass Mobile, you'll get this pop-up in Encompass Mobile on your iPad, your phone, whatever is your primary device. telling you that your account is being logged into, the date and time, and down here you can choose to trust this device if it is actually you, the one logging in, and it's like your office computer or whatever it may be. You can trust that device so you don't get asked again, and approve or deny. If you don't use Encompass Mobile, maybe you're somebody at the office who never really uses Encompass Mobile, you have the ability to use authenticator codes instead. So this is like a Microsoft or Google or any other authenticator app that you can download from the app library or the store in Android devices that will give you a unique code that you'll type in here after you click this button and will verify you. You do have to link your Encompass account to your authenticator app first. If you need help with that, let us know. Support can help walk you through that. Usually those authenticator apps will tell you how to make that link as well. The nice thing about this MFA here, anybody new, probably within the last year or so, it's automatically going to have this MFA by default. You do have to turn it off. If you've been around for a while, this may not be on by default, so you can enable this by individual role or for your entire organization. So up to you. We do allow for third-party MFA too, so if your company uses something else, like Google, Microsoft, or Duo, or some other third-party MFA, we can support that. If you need help with setting that up, just let us know, reach out to support. Next up, we've got single sign-on. So this is pretty common with a lot of our customers, right? You have your Google account, your Microsoft account, whatever it may be, that you have that sign-on and you want to do the open authentication with. We do support that more than the ones that you see here. These are just some of the most common, but you get that button at the bottom of the login page from Encompass that lets you log in through one of your providers, whoever it may be. Again, you can require this either at the role level or for the entire organization, whichever makes the most sense for you. And we do have some help resources out there about how to set this up. So if you are looking to do this, head over to that help resources dashboard and search for single sign-on. All right, we're going to move into managing your users and roles. We're going to start out with some manual ways to do that first, and then we will close out with how to use some of our apps in the app library to do it for you. So starting out, this is our role management console dashboard. It's kind of a handy dashboard to get an overall view of a role for what they can do, what they can see, and who is assigned to that role. So really nice way to get like a full overview. You can actually access this dashboard directly from the roles table. So I'll pop that open here. And on the left-hand side, you'll see these little icons here. These are going to take you to that dashboard. So we'll pick a role here. I'm just going to choose the accountant, and I'll click that little icon. And it's going to open up the role management console for that role that I selected. So what we get here is an overview of the role record itself, who created it, the user type that's linked to that specific role. So for the accountant, I see their user type is employee restricted. And I see some other information for them, like their mobile application, like I talked about, what they see when they log into Encompass Mobile. We also see the dashboards that they're able to see. So remember, their role controls the different dashboards that they're able to access. Anything with a check mark is what they can see right now. So they can search for any of these dashboards in the search for anything. Anything that doesn't have a check mark are things that they can't see right now. So if the accountant role needed to have this EDI billing dashboard, you click that check mark, it does it really fast, now they have access. You can also search too, so if you know a specific name of a dashboard or who owns that dashboard, you can search for them here. Same thing with permissions. So we see all of the permissions that are already applied to the accountant role by the check mark here. When I scroll down, I can see the ones that are not applied. So if I need to add something extra to them, like load sheet add, I can check that. It does it really fast, and now it's ready to go for them. At the bottom, I can see the users that are assigned to this role. So there's four, we have four accountants. These are who are getting both the dashboard and permissions that we see here. The other nice thing that I can do on this dashboard is compare roles. So at the top, I have my selected role, but then I have the ability to select another one. So my compare role. So let's say I want to compare the accountant to the warehouseman role. When I click select, it's going to refresh the dashboard for me here. And I'm going to get some side-by-side comparisons, and then we'll talk about how these work here. So on the role side, anything that I see in gray means that there's a difference between the two. So the name of the role, accountant versus warehouseman, is different. The role ID is different. Everything else is pretty much the same here. But when I come over to the dashboards and permissions side, we see two different colors here. So we're seeing the differences again between the two permissions. So anything that you see in the gray and light gray is a difference between the two. So a quick way to come compare things, especially if you're looking at somebody who is missing some permissions, or you have two roles that are doing similar things but aren't able to access the same things, you can come do a comparison here. All right. Here's the clone user permissions dashboard we've talked so much about. So instead of logging in with somebody else's credentials to see what they're seeing, you have the ability to clone them. Now, you do need a special permission to do this, so not everyone can do this. You need this permission edit permission. And if you have that, which is usually a higher level role that has these like full access, you can clone anybody in Encompass and see exactly what they see and how they see it. The way you do that is by going to the clone user permissions dashboard, just using the universal search bar, or you can go to your profile and it's one of the tabs at the top. You'll search for the name of the person you want to clone. You can see a list of their permissions down here. If you expand these, I can see all the permissions that are assigned to their role and if they have any user permissions. And then you'll click clone. I know that I'm cloning somebody because I can look at the bottom left corner and I can see my name and then in parentheses cloning whoever it is. This lets me navigate through Encompass, look at dashboards, reports, tables, and see them exactly how this person sees them. If I need to stop cloning somebody, the only way to do that is to log out. So I need to click on my name down here, log out, and log back in. Okay, so we talked a lot about manual things of managing your users. We have some automatic things that can do a lot of this for you. In our app library, we have a few apps that can kind of clean up some of your information about your users. So to get there, you're just going to search for app library in the universal search bar. You'll see a bunch of tiles for our different apps that are available, and then you can search in the search box over here for whichever one you want to see. So I'll search for role. Here's a role cleanup. This is the first one we're going to talk about. The role cleanup app will find roles in your system that don't have any users assigned. These don't include system Encompass roles, so ones that we've created, but any custom roles that you've created, this app will look for those, see if there's anybody assigned to them, and if they're empty, nobody's assigned to that role, it will delete it. You can choose how often this schedule runs. So if you want it to look quarterly or yearly, whatever it may be, to look for those empty roles, and it will automatically delete them for you and keep your roles table cleaned up. Our next one is super popular, our auto inactivate users after the user's end date app. This one is really nice for those users that are leaving the company. Maybe they've given you 2 weeks notice. You know when they're going to be leaving. You can set an end date on their user record. And this app will automatically inactivate that user after their end date. So we take a look at a user here. It's going to be in this HR section on the right. So we see their start date, when they started at the company, and there's also an end date field here. If you know their end date, they've given you their notice, you'll put in their last day in the end date here. And then this app will automatically run on whatever schedule you want it to run and inactivate those users for you. So you don't have to go in, find Greta, hit the edit, inactivate them. The system does it for you. And then our last one here that we're going to talk about is the deactivate users after inactivity. So another way to catch people, maybe if they've left the company, maybe they didn't get an end date added onto their user record. This is kind of a catch-all after that. What this does is it will automatically deactivate users who haven't logged in for a set period of time. You get to decide that amount of time, so could be 6 months, a year, however long you want it to be. The system will look for those users that haven't logged in based on events on the time clock events table, which is where we log those logins, and it will automatically inactivate them. So if you have a user who hasn't logged in for 6 months, the system will run the scheduled task, find that user, and automatically inactivate them for you. Again, you can choose the desired number of inactivity days to whatever makes the most sense for your company. And then you can set this on a schedule to say, run this once a week, run it once a month, whatever makes the most sense for you. One thing to note about this one is it is only for employee users. We know that a lot of our other partner users aren't logging in that often, like we are as employees. So if a vendor doesn't log in for 6 months, that's not that unusual. We don't necessarily want to take away their access if they're going to log in again in a month. And then the last thing I want to show you is our user analysis and security dashboard. I think this is a little known secret that a lot of people haven't seen that has some really helpful information here, especially if you are somebody who is responsible for managing your users or the security of your site. There's a bunch of different things that you can view in here, so I'm just going to pop open the dashboard so we can see what it looks like. Again, you can get to this just in the universal search bar, search in users, analysis, and security. And we get a bunch of different widgets, reports, and tables on here that you can take a look at. This is a test site, so it's not that interesting to look at, but we can see kind of the overall view of what we get. So at the top, I just get some stats here for our employees, our customer users, and our supplier users. I can see users without an email or mobile number. So this is helpful if you're going to look for those people who are maybe frequently calling in to get their password reset. You can get a quick report of those people who need an email or mobile number set on the user record. I can see successful and failed sign-ins here, users who haven't logged in for 60 days, and then some other nice pop-out reports here that I can go to, like recent login locations is really nice. If you're noticing something weird in your site, you can click on this button. It'll actually show you a map of all your logins. If you have something in a country that is not the country you work out of, that might be a sign that you need to take a look at your security in your site. Lots of other reports in here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you're managing the security of your site or just managing your users, this is a great place to come to kind of see everything in one place. All right, I'm going to leave some time for questions here. So throw in any questions that you have, and I'm just going to kind of close us out here. I want to thank everybody for coming today. We have several other skills kickstarts scheduled and in our reporting archive. The skills kickstarts can be found right on your site. So if you open up your side panel on the left-hand side, we'll just open one up here so you can see. So on the left-hand side here, you're going to look for that support section. Okay. And you will have a button in here for e-learning or BevEd. And that is going to take you to our e-learning dashboard, which is where you're going to sign up for upcoming live webinars. Or there's a tab for our recording archive where you can go look at past webinars. It is a whole catalog of any webinars we've done in the past couple of years. So lots of helpful stuff there. And I don't see any questions that have come through. So we'll go ahead and close out. Thanks everybody for coming and have a great rest of your day.